All right, so now you're all experts on loans and bonds and stocks, and the next thing we need to talk about are bank deposits. And you're probably thinking, wait a second, Mr. Malcolm, we're talking about financial assets here. We're talking about, you know, money and companies and stuff like that. I was a bank deposit a financial asset? Totally is, and actually, bank deposits are going to be a big part of this unit later on, especially when we talk about like fractional reserve banking and reserve rates and all that stuff later on. Money multipliers, pretty much all has to do with bank deposits and how banks work. Um, so yeah, definitely a financial asset, definitely an important one. So you put your money in the bank to keep it safe, and the bank holds it and keeps it safe for you because the bank loves you, right? That's how banks work. Wrong. No, banks don't love you. They don't care about you. They care about making money. They're a business. Just like McDonald's. McDonald's doesn't really want you to eat hamburgers. They want your money. If you just gave them money without a hamburger, they'd be even happier, right? That's how business works. So the bank is a company. It's a business. Um, and they're just a special kind of one, right? They will hold your money for you and keep it safe, but they're not doing it out of love and their altruism. They're doing it to make money. So the bank takes your money, and they have a liability to give it back, right? So make sure you understand that right first. We're using this word a lot, so make sure you understand what liability means. What liability means. The bank takes your money, and they now have a liability to give it back to you. That's the idea, right? So you put $1,000 into the bank. The understanding is that if you go to the bank, you should be able to get $1,000, right? And you can take it out whenever you want. But banks operate on this principle. Do people do that? Do people take all of the money out of the bank right away? I mean, you guys are young people. You don't have any money. You're probably like, yeah, no, I don't have any money in the bank, and that's true. But I also have to think that banks aren't just run for teenagers. They're banks hold money for older people. They hold money for companies and countries, and so they can have a large amount of assets basically. So the bank takes your money, and they have a liability to pay you back. That's the idea. And they also have the understanding that people typically aren't going to come and take all of their money out right away, right? So you put your money in the bank to keep it safe, and the bank is then going to use your money because they believe, and they're usually correct, that people aren't going to come and take all the money out. So your bank account is a financial asset. It's basically an interest-free loan to the bank. Yes, they have a liability to pay you back, but now they have money that they can do stuff with. And the bank will use your money and other people's money to create financial assets. Most banks, especially like credit unions and stuff, will do loans. So if you need to get a house or you want to buy a car or get extra money for college because um, sometimes the grants and loans that you get from the government aren't enough, so you have to get private loans, right? Which are not ideal, higher interest rates. But anyways, the bank will then use your money, the money that's in the bank, and they will create other financial assets with it. Now they still have that liability to pay you back, right? So if you go in there, you'll get your money, but they might actually be using your money, and we'll look at other examples of how this works later on. They might be using your money to make more money. If you go out and you take out your $1,000, they'll give it to you, no problem. If everybody goes and tries to get their money, their $1,000 or whatever, out of the bank, then the bank's going to have a problem. And we'll talk about that later. We'll talk about runs on the banks, and you've probably learned this stuff in U.S. history already. Um, but the bank uses your money and other people's money to create more money for themselves by giving out loans, interest-bearing assets essentially. They only need to keep a certain percentage of cash on hand. Later on, we're going to call this the reserve amount. And so the bank keeps a certain amount of cash on hand, and that'll never cause problems, right? That's a perfect system. All right, let's do some review questions. All right, which of the following best defines the risk of a financial asset? This is a bit of a gotcha question because the first one, A here, looks really good, right? The probability that an asset will lose value. Well, that's wrong, so don't pick that one. Remember, risk, what best defines the risk of a financial asset. You might look at A and say, well, that's got to be correct because risk means losing oftentimes, right? And that's how we use that word often, but not in economics. Risk is the idea that there's a possibility of losing money, but there's also a possibility of gaining money. Remember, high risk, high reward. If you invested in Microsoft, yes, there was a risk of losing all of your money, but there was also a risk of making money. The risk is there that it is risky, but you might possibly make more money. So when an economist talks about risk or a financial planner talks about risk, they're basically talking about whether or not it's going to gain or lose. That it's going to go both ways. So high risk, high reward. Low risk, lower reward, typically. High risk, though, also high chance of losing everything. That is true. So it's a gain and loss. So it goes both ways. What happens to the price and interest rate of a bond if the demand for that bond increases? So demand for the bond is increasing. Think about what that's saying. If there's higher demand for a bond from a company, what might that mean about the company and their risk and interest rates and things? So if there's higher demand for it, the interest rate's probably going to go down and the price is going to increase. Think about that. If there is a company and it's seen as more of a stable bet and stuff like that, there's a higher demand for it, the interest rates for it will go down. The company is probably seen as a sure thing, as a sure deal. They're less risky all of a sudden, and people are more willing to give them loans. And somebody says, "Hey, I need some money." You're like, "Oh yeah, you're probably going to pay me back. I'm more willing to pay you to give you loans, and give you bonds." So the interest rate will go down, right? So the interest rate will go down. Well, we said before. Boop, 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 boop. Here we go. Nope. Boop. The price of previously issued bonds and interest rates are inversely related. If interest rates are going down, what does that mean for price? If interest rates go down, then price will go up. Price will increase. Whenever with bonds, it's pretty simple. Price increase, interest rate down. Interest rate goes down, price goes up. It's pretty simple that way. So hopefully that's making a little bit of sense. We're going to see another review question about that in a second. Which of the following financial assets carries the most risk? Well, cash has an opportunity cost, but it's usually not that risky. At least not typically. I mean, if you're in Venezuela, maybe, but usually it's not that risky. Let's see, checking deposits and saving deposits, basically the same here, and for our understanding right now, yes, they are different, but for us right now, they're same understanding, and we haven't talked about it yet, but banks and other institutions have insurance today up to $250,000, so your money's supposed to be safe in the banks and stuff, so usually those are considered pretty low risk. Banks are fairly heavily regulated. So it kind of leaves us here with stocks and bonds. So which one is the most risk? Stonks. So think about this. A bond is an IOU. It's a promise. If the company goes under, they have to pay that off. So all the assets and everything the company has gets sold off. They go to paying off the bonds. That's what's going to get paid off first. Stocks, well, I mean, hey, you own part of that company, and now the company's worth nothing, and so you've lost everything. The other way is stocks. You own part of that company, and the company's doing great. You bought Apple or Microsoft way decades ago, and now you're super profitable. The bond owner doesn't have any rights to that profit. They don't own part of that company, but the stockholder does. So they have a higher risk. They have a higher reward. They also have a higher chance of losing everything. So stocks have higher risk. They are more risky than bonds, definitely more than cash, and definitely more than deposits, bank deposits. All right, I think this is the last one. So, Maxistan Central Bank lowered interest rates last month. So, interest rates are going down. Was it Ceteris Paribus? All else being equal, what would we expect to happen to previously issued bonds in Maxistan? So, you already owned a bond, but interest rates are going down. What is going to happen to bond? Just in general. Doesn't say prices or anything. What's going to happen in general? What's going to happen to previously issued bonds? Will bond prices increase? The par value of bonds will increase? Nothing will change? Coupon payments will decrease? The bonds dividends will decrease? Bonds will pay dividend. Okay, so this one, it's very much related to the one we already did a second ago here. Interest rates going down, all else being equal, what should we expect to happen to bonds in Maxistan? Bond prices will be increasing. Yay! Now, if you said par value, think about why that's not right. So par value is the nominal face value of the bond. That's just on the piece of paper. Think like original bonds. They were literally pieces of paper with little coupon-y things on them. So they were literally pieces of paper. That par value, if it says $1,000, they're not going to come to your house and like scribble off the $1,000 and change it. So that's not going to change. But how much you can get for it, if you are on the bond market and you're buying and selling bonds now, is going to change. Interest rates are going down. So let's say interest rates were 10%. Now it's 5%, right? You still have a piece of paper. You still have a piece of paper saying $1,000 at 10%. But if somebody goes to the store goes to the bond market right now and they buy a new $1,000 bond, they only get 5%. So your bond is worth more than a current one being sold. Even though the par value is the same, $1,000, $1,000, the interest rate's different. And so the bond prices will increase. Remember, there's an inverse relationship. Interest rates go down, bond prices will go up. And we're talking about not par value prices, we're talking about the price on the market. And with that, we're done with topic 4.1, which I know is a long one, but understanding the basic idea of different financial assets is important. All right, next videos we'll get into topic 4.2.